Hello, everybody. It's John Browning on the Building Your Life podcast, and I'm really excited to have a special guest that I have followed for goodness, I think it's been over a year now. Andrew Brown. He's I believe, the owner, right, of Tooltech.
Toolfetch.
Tool. Okay, all right. And I'd love to. Nobody can introduce yourself better than you. I'd love to just have hear a little bit about what it is that you do, and then I want to talk a little bit about why you do it, if that's all right.
Sure. John, thanks for having me today. I co-founded Toolfetch. We help the trades stop chasing what they need. We simply fetch it for them. So every day that you're down on a job is a blow to the bottom line. When you're chasing materials and trying to get equipment to your location, costs you time, costs your money, and costs your productivity. We get the trades what they want, when they want it, and where they want it, so they don't spend resources chasing it. We carry over 2 million products from 650 different vendors for products like material lifts, drain cleaners, chemicals, safety equipment. And we've been doing it on a 23, almost 24 years. We've been an online e-commerce company, and we've been a portal for the trades.
Wow. So you got a long history there. And, in addition to that, which is where I feel like I know you because I've seen so many of your videos. I've watched your podcast, which, by the way, tell everybody the name of your podcast, because if they're like me, they'll just kind of be fascinated by some of the people that you interview and talk to. So what's your podcast? And why do you do that? You have the successful business. You're involved with the Bring Back the Trades movement, and yet you still put this content out there. Why do you do that?
So I have a podcast called The Lost Art of the Skilled Trades, where I will bring on tradespeople in the trades, whether it's welders, electricians, carpenters, any blue collar skilled trade, to talk about their story, their journey, what they went through, how they came up through the trades, and also business owners as well, and what they see going on for the next generation to get into the trades. I love this. I mean, this is like a mission and a passion for me. And you asked me, how did I kind of get into this? And one date always sticks out to me. It's 9/11/2001, which just passed. And it's always sentimental for me, and obviously a lot of different people, for me in a different way, because I was down there helping first responders, EMS, firefighters, and working back to back with tradespeople finding survivors a few days after the planes had just hit the buildings. And I was a high tech guy. I didn't know anything about tools or equipment. I wasn't even in that stratosphere. And it was really the aftermath of being there where I said, you know what? I don't want to be in IT. I want to give back to the people that I saw rummaging through all the rubble and doing what they were doing, and in some respects in not the most safe manner. And that was one of the aspects that came out of that, was safety for people in the trades. And this is really why myself and my brother built a portal for the trades, to really give them the products they need to get infrastructure work done, roads, bridges, tunnels, and residential, commercial buildings, to get their projects done and also keep them safe. So we built out a safety program to teach OSHA 10, OSHA 30, fall protection, and a lot of other safety precautions, because the number one aspect for any tradesperson, whether men or women, is making sure they get home to their loved ones and make sure they come home with 10 fingers and 10 toes. And I've just been an advocate ever since 9/11, doing it behind the scenes. And a handful of years ago, I started putting out some content about the trades. I wanted to be a beacon. I wanted to be a voice. And I've just been doing it on a consistent basis. So what you see on LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, I love doing that stuff. And if I can change one person's perception on the trades, if I can have one kid who's coming up who maybe is thinking the college route, which are necessarily not built for everybody, but maybe we'll think about a trades path. If I could change one person's perception, that's a win for me. That's why I do what I do. I love it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, it's fantastic. We have here at Guardian Rock Wealth, and I'm noticing some parallels between your path and my path because I was on Wall Street. I happened to be in Chicago, thankfully, because on any given day, I would have been in that second tower because that's where my company was. I was in Chicago on that day. I was on the trading desk, and I will never forget it. Neither will anybody who was, alive and aware at that time. And even a year later, which is really when I got the idea for the book Build a Life, Not a Portfolio, and the idea that maybe I didn't want to give so much of my life to chasing the almighty dollar, but to back to my family and living the best life I could, and that money was just a tool. Just like the tradespeople use tools to their advantage to help them do what they do or to protect themselves. That is really, when you get the right perspective, that's what money is. And it just needs to be used correctly. But the idea is not to just collect a bunch of it. You don't want to collect a bunch of tools you don't use or you don't use well. It's just a tool to build your best life. And that's kind of, a year after 9/11, when I was standing in the Hilton Hotel right across the street, which is kind of where I always stayed, just to keep one thing in my life constant at the time. And they were still cleaning up, and it was still a mess. And that was when I kind of got the idea. It took me another 15 years to plan it and to build it and build the foundations and all that. And now we have Guardian Rock Wealth, where we help people that, I wouldn't have been able to help while I was still on Wall Street. I wasn't even allowed to talk to some of these people. They didn't have quote unquote enough assets, for me to talk to. Now I can talk to whoever I want to. And a lot of times it ends up being, people in the trades, which is what got me interested in what you were doing and watching your videos and all of that, is to kind of get in touch with more of them. Because what I find is that there are a lot of successful people in the trades that are doing a fantastic job, and they get to this, a couple years out from when, the knees aren't feeling as good. It gets harder to do some of that labor, and they start to think about retirement, and they realize, what, I've been really good plumber, welder, electrician, or whatever, and I haven't really done a lot of planning for my retirement and using that tool we call money. And they're one of my favorite clients just because they tend to be people in the trades, and I don't want to stereotype too much, but they tend to be, just in my opinion, a little more down to earth, and they kind of understand, I'm a good electrician, I'm a good plumber, welder, whatever it might be. And one of the things that I need a little help with, right? Call a professional. When do what you do best and then call a professional. They kind of tend to get that, which is something you don't always get with some of the white collar folks. And now I'm stereotyping again, but I am one, so I'll pick on myself there. But it's been a lot of fun watching you kind of bring awareness to that. I've actually got a question on, young people today too later on, but um, I'll just ask that now. So you've got a young person that maybe has made not the greatest of decisions, which by the way happens to us all, right? And they've kind of quote unquote missed their first chance right out of high school, maybe, but they're looking to maybe get into the trades. I'm thinking of one particular person right now who wants to get into plumbing, but he made some really poor decisions when he was younger, and those kind of follow you sometimes. What's your best advice for kind of where should they start? It gets a little bit overwhelming when you're trying to get into the trades, right? Especially if you're in your late 20s instead of your early 20s. You have good advice for them.
Career exploration in the trades has always been difficult in my perspective in trying to find the right path for yourself. But there are resources out there that can sort of cut through all of that. So, looking within your own network, your family, your extended family, friends, neighbors, local businesses. If you're interested in working with your hands, you kind of had that feeling of like, I like to tinker with things. I fix things around the house. I tinker on my car and I have this technical spark, but what do I do with it? How do I even make money off of it?
Right.
One thing is to look or speak to family members that are maybe in the trades. Maybe someone is an electrician, an uncle, or maybe it's a guy down the street or a woman down the street who is an electrician that you can start to talk to. I always think attaching yourself to someone who's been in whatever you want to do 20 years, 30 years in that industry to soak up all their resources, all their knowledge, because that can cut so much time and energy off of the path that you want to take. There's always somebody who's been on that journey. It's really hard not to find somebody who's kind of done something. Obviously, it's all different industries, but if you find that individual, attach yourself to that individual, and they can introduce you to other people. That might even lead to a job, an apprenticeship. Maybe they can give a recommendation on trade school. That's one option to do. There are resources out there like Explore the Trades. It's an organization by Kate Semeno is a foundation of on our foundation called the Skilled Trades Advisory Council. And she helps individuals find their path in the trades and gets them connected to the right programs. You can take assessments. You can figure out exactly what you want to do, whether it's welding, electrical, carpentry, because there's a lot of different options. And they can set you up with someone who's a mentor or someone in sort of the industry. That's another option. There's a website called SkillPoint. SkillPoint is a portal where you can go on and you can find out all resources about the trades. You take an assessment. They ask you about 40 or 50 different questions. And then after the assessment, it says, well, you'd be more likely to be an electrician. You'd be more likely to be a welder. And guess what? Here are all the things you can do within welding. Here is the potential of earnings. And on top of, here are all the trade schools around the country that you can contact. And, oh, by the way, you can apply for funding or scholarship through our different arm. So that's another resource. You have associations. So if you want to be a welder, the American Welding Society, who I volunteer with a little bit on the social media side, you can go to them and you can ask them, I'm thinking about welding. You can go on their website. You can take an assessment tool. It will give you, if you want to be a boiler maker, or if you want to do underwater welding, whatever it may be, and they can give you resources of what to do. But there's a few different ways that you can go about this. You need to be proactive on this. I do think that if you just rely on a guidance counselor, this is only my perspective. I don't think you're going to get that far. I think they are pushing the college initiative. Again, that's for the right person. But if you're going down the trades route, I don't know if that's the right avenue for you. But look within your own network. And even if you can't find people in your network, you can go to a local business. And this is being proactive, a local plumbing company or a local welding supply. And you can go in if you have that personality and ask the owner, I'm really interested in kind of learning the trade. Do you have any suggestions? Maybe you can get a job there. Maybe they can help you through. You never know until you ask for help. Ask for help. That's what you need to do. And you need to be a little proactive on that.
Yeah, I love it. And again, the parallels to like the financial industry when people ask how do you break in, and the answer is, you're probably not going to start as a portfolio manager, right? It's just that's not where you start. When I started, I was on the phones, answering questions, customer service, and you do have to start there, but that's what I did in the financial services industry. I latched on to everybody I could that was at a higher level than I was, and I learned every single thing I possibly could from them. And what I found, and I've actually found that it's more prevalent in the trades, is that these guys are willing to talk to a young person who has the wherewithal and the proactivity to ask them, they're happy to talk about what they do, right? Because they like it. Most of them do. Oh, I mean,
They-
volunteer to sweep the floors, whatever, right?
yeah, look, if I am not, I'm a business owner and somebody comes in is like I see this individual, this younger kid who's just gung ho and wants to learn, I would totally take them under my wing. That's just me. And some people will say, well, I'll charge for it, but I wouldn't even, I would just say like, look, this person's starting because everybody was new at some point and wanted help with some point. So pay it forward, pay it back because someone's helped you along the way. People have helped me along the way, and I'm sure people have helped you along the way. And they didn't have to,
Right.
but it's all about being proactive and asking for help. Don't try to do it yourself. I did that for years. It set me back. I was given wrong advice. And finally, I got the courage to be like, I need help and I'm not good at this, this, and this. And I was very surprised. Again, they helped me out and I'm a better person for it and in my career.
Yeah. So that would, it's very similar advice. I didn't know if it would be or not, but very similar advice that I give to folks who are looking to get started in the financial services industry is you just got to go out and ask and get over that fear, right? And be willing to do, maybe some projects that nobody else wants to do. And people will help you. I find it fun to help somebody newer and younger, and makes me feel a little bit younger than as well, right? So
Yeah, it does.
yeah, exactly. Sometimes I need to feel a little bit younger, frankly, right? So, so you've been doing this for 24 years, so quarter of a century coming up, right? My wife always hates it when I tell people she's been a nurse for more than a quarter of a century. She's like, "No, don't tell people that." But seriously, what that means to me is experience matters, and you've seen a lot. If there was one thing that you could point to, one thing that you've learned that you could pass along to people today on the podcast, what would it be?
If you're an entrepreneur, don't give up. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to be a business owner. I'm not gonna lie here. I mean, it's very difficult. You have ups and downs, and sometimes you just want to quit, and sometimes things are rolling, and then all of a sudden something hits you a ton of bricks, and you're like, really, that's difficult. And you need to be just positive minded. Stay away from the negative side. You're gonna have it's a roller coaster. You have your ups and downs, but having a positive mindset, getting help, um, and understanding that other companies, business owners run into this situation as well, and get around other people who are business owners. And it's interesting enough, where I am up here in New York, there's not a lot of business owners. Most people work for other people. So I joined a group called Vistage, which is a group of CEOs, and it's countrywide.
Mhm.
But here in New York, we just met uh, earlier this week, where I meet with 15 other CEOs, and we have a speaker, and they talk about a relevant topic. But we have a round table of, hey, I got this thing going on in my business, and don't know what to do. And you have an open discussion with other business owners who can give you advice from other industries. And it's like every time I leave that uh, meeting, I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. I could try this. And you
Yeah.
feel good about talking about the issue. You get air it out as long as you're open and honest with people. So getting around other business owners is extremely important. But I'm not. It's a tough journey. It is not for everybody. But just being driven, hard work. Don't get up. Don't give up. You're going to get knocked down. Get back up. Be positive, and keep moving forward.
Yeah. I would I've bought a couple businesses. I've started a couple businesses. This is, I think, going to be my last one because this is the one that I enjoy the most. And I would echo that. It's not easy. Right about the time you're on top, that's when I start to worry now, because I've done it long enough to know that that's about the time you get your knees knocked out from underneath of you. and you've got to have the grit to stay with it. And I think that's great advice that you give about Vistage. I'm part of a group called the SCN, the Success Champions Network, and it's a lot of the same. And that also, that advice you gave earlier, it's really about networking. When you're talking about young people going out, and it's the same way when you're an entrepreneur or you're a business owner. We tend to forget about it. Maybe we do networking to get more business, but to me, networking is who can I possibly introduce you to, or you could introduce me to, not for a sale, but just to have that introduction. And maybe it does lead to a sale, which is fantastic. But the attitude and mentality is, who's the next best person that I can meet that might give me some advice, have an idea that I could use, or maybe I have something that they could use. And that's what Vistage does for you, I think. I've attended a few of those. I haven't joined yet, but it's kind of the same idea. And you see all the positive things, right? Like we talk about positive things, generally speaking, on the Building Your Life podcast. The social media is for the most part positive, positive, positive. And what people don't see is the hard day to day, those nights that you're just like, what the heck am I going to do? And just figuring it out. And sometimes you're not equipped to figure it out, but somebody else in your network is. They've been there, right? That's the idea.
Yeah, there's always going to be someone in your network, someone who has been down that, traveled down that road, who can really help you. So keep an eye out for that individual. And again, people are willing to help you. Just make sure you just pay it forward, because you want to make sure that you can help that next person as well.
Don't forget where you've been. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That is super important as well. One of the things as we talk about networking and people that you meet and everything else, I've just been impressed with the people that you've gotten on your podcast. I was just last night listening in on the Barbie the welder, which I had found her before you did the podcast. And sometimes if I need to turn my brain off for a little bit and just watch something really cool, if you go to her YouTube channel and just watch her work, it's amazing. And it's not, yes, welders put together America and it's awesome. But then you run into somebody like Barbie the welder who makes beautiful, unique stuff. How do you find these people? Where do they come from? And you got to go out and watch Andrew's podcast, or listen to it. It's fantastic, really interesting people on there.
Yeah, Barbie the welder, she's got a great story, great journey. I've known her for quite a while. Was introduced to her by somebody else. She's been following me. I've been following her. Um, I think it's, I am so active out there on social media that a lot of people follow me. So my outreach to people, if I ask them, say, would you be interested in being on the podcast? A lot of them will say yes. It's just a matter of scheduling from there. So I try to find interesting guests like Barbie the welder, and have a lot of other guests that I've had on, which I'm excited about. And I think it's just listening to their journey. It's so exciting just listening to their journey, and just let them kind of talk and see where the conversation goes. And I have a good time with it. And having the audience create value for the audience is extremely important, to make sure that we spend that 30 minutes creating value, that someone who's absorbing the podcast can really learn, grab a nugget or two. Someone who's getting into welding. I mean, a case in point with Barbie, she had tough upbringing. She was on wealth. Like,
Yeah.
people have those journeys. And when they listen to someone who's had that journey and has become successful, that's inspirational.
Yeah.
And I enjoy talking about that. And I loved having different individuals on in different trades, and really talking about the impact on the trades community and their stories. And it's just a passion of mine to continue to build that podcast.
Yeah. And it's amazing to me how people, make their money, make their living. and then they make stuff, right? They make the coolest things. And I wish I could do some of that stuff. I look at the especially I'm particularly interested in welding because, I'm a guy and I like fire. And it's like, sewing with fire. It's just I'm impressed with it. I love listening to what other people do. And that's a lot of what we do here on the Building Your Life podcast is just talk to other people that are in different industries, different trades, and try and raise awareness that it's not just your little bubble of the world, but there's a lot of other people that make your little bubble of the world possible, right? So I think in that way we're similar, even though my podcast and yours are completely different. One of the things I wanted to spring on you, so this we didn't do any preparation for this, right? But in terms of building your best life and all that, how would you say you have been able to do that? Because as I look and I follow you, I see you're interacting, you're having fun with your kids as well as everything else that you do. And that's one of the big things that got my attention after 9/11 is maybe I have six. So
God bless.
it was yeah, most of them are grown. I have one that's 17, she turns 18 next month, and I have one that just got out of the military. He's back in the house now trying to figure out what's next. But it's kids are a blessing, and it's easy to take your kids and frankly your significant other, your spouse, somewhat for granted as you get busy with the day to day and building your business or building your portfolio. How are you able to kind of build your best life at the same time?
It's hard. It's hard. When you say that work-life balance, especially being an entrepreneur, and you hear the stories where you're working all the time and you're just trying to support your family and you're trying to make this thing work. But then again, on the flip side, your family is sacrificing because they're not seeing you. And I used to do this where I used to go on vacation and I used to work, take phone calls. What kind of vacation is that? Why even go on vacation if you're just working? And I've been able to disconnect because we built out a leadership team
Mm,
and we built out the organizational structure so I can delegate certain things. So the day to day, I don't need to be there every single day and the business is still as strong or stronger because we found the right people in the right seat and the right culture fit. That's important. That's something when I was younger we didn't have, and it was all reliant on myself and my brother. But that's not a way of life. I mean, maybe in the beginning stages when you're starting to build it, but focusing on you can't get back the time where you didn't go to your son's baseball game or your daughter's concert because they remember that. You don't realize that they remember that. And especially when they get older, you can't get that time back. And here
right.
you are trying to build this company. And case in point, um, we have somebody uh, who we know who is in our business group. He passed away. Like he was supposed to come to the next meeting. He passed away. And, he's not old by any means. And here he is trying to build his business. And one day, poof, he's gone. And that's the things that really shock you to the core. And you're like,
Yeah.
wait a second, tomorrow it can be over. And what am I doing here? I should be spending time with my family. I should be making impact on my kid's life. So that's why I've done all these different things to stay with my kids. If they're reading, stay with them. If they're even watching something on TV, I try to be with them. I go to their sports on the weekend. It's just being there and showing up and being present and being just a good parent. And that's what I try to do because I want to be a part of their lives. I want to have that good relationship as they get older and just make a difference in their lives. And you have to be proactive on that. Otherwise, you can sacrifice that and, that starts to fray over time. So you got to make that numero uno priority top number one.
Yeah, 100%, Garen. I just had that happen really two back to back. clients, one in December, one in January, roughly, my age, and they're in their early 50s, and one of them didn't wake up the day after Christmas. Had been fine the day before, just didn't wake up. And another one developed brain cancer and was gone within 60 days. And I don't want to be a downer here, but I think as you get older, you start to realize you're not immortal. But I think especially business owners, right? Because we're driven and we're focused on our business and everything else, we forget that we may not have as much time as we think. That's number one. And speaking to the financial aspect of that, if you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, have you prepared for the event of a healthcare event, an accident, or anything like that that could maybe take you out of the picture? What's your succession plan? What's your plan to create a paycheck protection plan that is yours personally, not just in retirement, but in the event something were to happen? And I think we get so wrapped up. I say we because I'm a business owner as well. We get wrapped up in doing what we do really, really well that we forget to take an hour, 2 hours to make sure those boring things like estate planning and insurance, you don't want to be overinsured, but you also don't want to be underinsured. And what's your plan to still live your best life, even if something horrible happens? Or what's your plan to make sure your family still can live their best life, even if something were to happen? And I know you're in the business of making sure that something doesn't happen, but you just can't do it 100% of the time, right?
Yeah, you brought up a good point. And a lot of business owners don't do that. They just get busy in the day to day, and they only get proactive when something happens, and sometimes it's too late.
Yep.
And you need to think about that stuff and plan for the future, because you never know. And putting everything in place from insurance to will and whatever else you need to do to protect your family is extremely, extremely important. But not everybody does it. This is why I like when we have these Vistage meetings and a speaker comes in for a couple of hours and you're talking about these things, and it really kind of like say, wait, I'm not secure in these areas. I need to work on that. But don't do it, you know, don't wait to last minute. Get through these things, like these little things, like these boring things that you really don't want to do, but you got to get through it. Put it past you and know that you're protecting yourself and protecting your family.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that I find that business owners tend to not really think about is the idea of an exit. I was just on the Faces of Business last night with Damon Pastuca, which I got to introduce you to, by the way. I think you guys would be a good introduction. Networking right here on the Building Your Life podcast. So I'll put you guys in touch with each other. But we were talking about the idea of exit planning, and a lot of guys that have been whatever they've been in the trades, and they've built their own business, or maybe they've just been part of a business and they own part of it, and they haven't really thought about the tax implications of when they want to exit. And that you can save yourself if you've got even if it's say a $1 or $2 million business, not very big in today's standards. If you just do the right tax planning, you got to start about 5 years out from when you think you might want to do that. But if you've done the right planning, you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of a difference towards your personal paycheck protection program in retirement. And certainly if you've got a 30, 40, 50 million, $100 million business, you could save yourself millions of dollars if you just plan for it, just like you would if you're building something, just like you would if you're doing a plumbing project or electrical project. You don't just jump in and start running wires. You plan for it. You make sure you got the right materials, the right tools, your safety issues. it's the same thing when you're preparing for, we're all getting older. We're, you know, it's getting older is better than the alternative, right? So that's
Exactly.
what are some of the things that, have you ever had those conversations with some of the people that you talk to? It might not be something that you really cover on your show, but have you ever had those conversations or thought about it yourself?
Um, Look, that always crosses my mind. Not necessarily happens on my podcast or anything like that, but
Yeah.
always crosses my mind, and we always talk about that. Just being a business owner, you just need to plan for the future and just make sure there's not a lot of loose ends there. Because again, you find out the hard way, especially if you want to exit your business and you're over a threshold and you want to take care of your family. You don't want that lead them with a tax burden. There's a lot of things that you need to think about. Sometimes you don't think about it because again, you're so caught up in the day to day. So get those things in place. Just make sure. And if you don't understand it, which a lot of people don't, get around the right people who really understand how to put that in place, protect your family, protect yourself, and just make sure that you're doing this in advance. So when the time comes, you're not scrambling. Because I've seen that with family members, I've seen that with close friends. They're scrambling, it's scary, and it's just sometimes it's just a bad situation. So get ahead of it.
Yeah, and you know, not to be like a downer and talk about all this stuff. This actually can be, you know, of course, this is me talking because I'm a nerd on this kind of stuff. This can actually be exciting. As I tell people, yes, you know, we talked about you can't get your time back. They're not making any more of it. And people say that's the most important thing. I do things a little bit differently. I say the actual most important thing is peace, because you can have time, but if you're not at peace with what's going on now and what's going to happen in the future, you can put yourself at peace, and that makes your time that much more valuable. You can make sure things like your health are taken care of, and that makes your time that much more valuable. So there are things you can do, and yes, it's complicated. Matter of fact, it's more than complicated, it's complex. And there's a little bit of a difference, because complicated is when you, it's basically a math problem, right? You know that this part is broken, so that's going to affect that part. But a complex situation is when you have multiple parts all moving in different directions, all impacting things in different ways, and they don't move necessarily in the same pattern every time. And that's what financial planning and wealth management is. It's complex. And that's what we do. We love to put those puzzle pieces together for people who do what they do really, really well and just need to have the peace to move forward and know that they're in a good position no matter what happens. That's kind of the idea. And kind of the same way you do, making sure that people are safe on the job site and in what they do. The idea is to keep people safe, even if maybe they don't know they're in danger. I don't know if you were ever run into that, where people are like, oh, that's no big deal. And yet you have an example of, yeah, it is a big deal.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Until really someone tells you. So yeah, I mean it's a good analogy. Obviously keeping safe because you want to know and be uh you want to be ahead of it in the sense of that you planned for it. So if it does happen or it's about to happen, you're already set up properly. This could be safety side, or this could be the business side, or it could be estate planning, whatever it may be, just to make sure that you have the right people in your circle who can guide you through this, and to make sure that you're prepared for something that can come up because you never know.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap it up here now, Andrew, but I really appreciate you coming on the show. It gives a whole different perspective about things. And again, if you haven't gone out to see his podcast or followed him on LinkedIn or any of the other social media channels, you really should do that. If you're a white collar guy, you'll just like it because it's stuff that we wish we could do. Talking to people that we wish we could be sometimes. So definitely go out there. What's the best way for them to reach you or to find you, Andrew?
AndrewBrown.net has all the resources, my contact information. I also speak on the trades where I am going to be on the speaking bureaus and talking about advocacy. So that's in sort of a new venture for me. The podcast, Lost Art of the Skilled Trades, is on Spotify, is on Apple and all major networks. You could also join my newsletter for the trades, where we talk about resources. We share interesting stories about the trades, advocacy, in LinkedIn and YouTube and other social media platforms. I put out a video every single day about the trades, banging the drum about getting the next generation into the trades. I'm passionate about it. I love what I do. And I'm always happy to speak about it.
Yeah, and from a financial perspective, by the way, going into the trades as opposed to having a bunch of college debt, especially if you really don't want to go to college and it's not really your thing, just makes a whole lot of financial sense. I know guys that are in the trades that are way ahead of the game compared to guys who have just a bunch of college debt that they're still paying off. Even though it may seem at first like you're not getting paid as much, over the longer term, from a financial planning perspective, the trades can be just an amazing way to go. So, and again, thanks for being on the podcast. Those of you who watch me each and every podcast, thank you for doing that. It's John Browning. You can reach me at guardianrockwealth.com. We're happy to speak with you no matter where you are in your financial journey. We're not your typical large firm. Again, we will talk to you no matter where you are. So reach out to us at guardianrockwealth.com or text the word life to 321-421-5213. And we will talk to you next time. Andrew, thanks so much for being with us today. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, John.